Hello, everybody. This is Pickleball. We are so excited to be here. I'm here with my producer and co-host, Fabian Rodriguez. Happy holidays, Fabian. Who do we got here?
Thank you, Rick. Our guest today is the man who brought a Moneyball approach to professional pickleball. He is a former CPA who walked away from a career at Deloitte to bet on himself and the sport full time. That bet paid off. He's a former world number one singles player, a four-time Major League pickleball champion, and was the captain of the New Jersey Fives. But he's best known as the man who broke the rule book. He invented the Zane Saw serve, a move so dominant that it forced the sport's governing bodies to rewrite the rules multiple times just to stop him. Off the court, Zane is a massive content creator. You know him from his instructional channel, Zane Navratil Pickleball, and as the co-host of the Pickle Pod, the flagship podcast of the sport's leading media brand, The Dink. Please welcome Zane Navratil. Zane, thank you so much for being on the show.
Dang, Fabian, I need you as like my full-time hype guy. I appreciate you guys having me. Rick and I were catching up a little bit, and it's been way too long. Rick and I go way back. Fabian, it's nice to meet you, man. But looking forward to chatting with you guys today.
Happy holidays, by the way, to everybody out there, all of our listeners as well. Zane, you have an incredible podcast. I really enjoy following your career. I think I was in the sport maybe a little bit earlier than you. You and I go way back. I have so many memories with you, and then also just seeing you evolve. I even know your lovely bride Jenny, and Wisconsin roots. Heck, I even went to Wisconsin to practice with you and Weinbach and Althoff. We've had some bloodbath battles, but ultimately, I kind of want to talk about where you are today. It seems like you routinely get in the top 10, 20 in doubles, mixed, singles. You're right there, still a premier athlete in this sport, but you clearly seem to have an incredible knack for communication, and you seem to have hot takes on a lot of things. And I got a lot of questions on your hot takes, big guy. So Fabian, you want to start?
Maybe we won't jump into hot takes just yet. But would love to get your story, Zane. So before you started playing pickleball, what sports did you play growing up, and how did you eventually get into the sport?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I played just about everything but football growing up. I played tennis, basketball, baseball, soccer, all that stuff. And then in high school, I guess specialized in tennis. But actually, my senior year of high school is when I first picked up a pickleball paddle. Um, but so I've actually been playing pickleball for a very long time, since 2013. It wasn't until after I played college tennis at UW Whitewater, after I got a job as an auditor for Deloitte, that I actually came back to pro pickleball in 2020. So I've been at pickleball for, at this point, like whatever that is, almost 13 years. And it's just been really, really cool to see, where it was then compared to where it is now. Yeah, that's a little bit about the pickleball journey of mine.
Well, there's a huge gap there, right? 2013 to 2020, right? Started playing, eventually going pro. Like, what was happening, between those years, when you eventually became pro?
Sure. Yeah, so 2013 was the first picking up of a paddle. I was still in high school. 2014 through 2018, I was playing college tennis, and I started ramping up my pickleball much more during that time. Rick, that's probably when we first started playing over the summers, and I started playing some tournaments and whatnot. I got my real job as an auditor, but I was still, before that, I was doing pretty well, and playing these regional tournaments, and doing well, but losing to guys like Dave or Rick and some of the other top players. Got my job as an auditor, but I decided to quit that in July of 2020 because, first off, I didn't like it that much, and then second, pro pickleball was really becoming a thing during the second half of 2020, and I figured, look, I have no idea whether I'll be successful at this or not, but I would rather, fail and try than never try at all. And so one of the things that I My only real fear is like regretting doing or not doing something. So that's my main fear, and I went for it. Obviously, paid off pretty well, and I'm, kind of considered, I guess, one of the OGs of pro pickleball at this point.
Zane, I feel like your dad had some relevance in your pickleball development. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, he was the one who dragged me to the Cesar Chavez Center in Racine, Wisconsin that summer and then or that winter, and we started playing all of our first tournaments together. I think we played tournaments as recently as 2018 or 2019 potentially. And he's a great player. He never really did the senior pro stuff, but I feel like he would have been a very good senior pro singles player. Yeah, he's the one who got me started in pickleball.
So would you say he kind of laid an old school foundation for your game? Obviously, you came out pretty hot with your style, and I would attribute a lot of that to tennis. But what foundational effect did he have for you?
Honestly, he and I were kind of learning the game together, right? Like I was younger and a little bit more athletic than he was 'cause he was 50 at that point. Obviously, he's a great athlete, but he was a little bit older than I was, and so we were both just kind of experimenting with different things, and then we'd go up to Madison and get our butts kicked by Dave Weinbach, and then we'd like, all right, that might work at the Cesar Chavez Center, but it doesn't work against Dave. So we kind of just experimented with a bunch of stuff together, figured out some stuff that worked, figured out some stuff for me that was like, hey, this is great stuff to take over from tennis versus, hey, this is stuff that you need to leave in tennis. But then also being able to test that against, guys like you, Dave, Althoff, um, that certainly helped as well.
Boy, hasn't pickleball evolved so much since you and I met really for the first time 12 years ago. I kind of am really yearning to know your perspective. Obviously, I'm involved at an administrative level with the National Pickleball League, and but what we see out there recently with um, the litigious situation between UPA and James Ignatowicz and Paris and whatnot. What is your take on that?
On the UPA situation with them.
Yeah, and contracts and the binding agreements and players maybe sometimes getting confused as to what they can or can't do.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, what this is in reference to is James Ignatowicz, Ryan Fu, and Vivian Glasman had their contracts terminated by the UPA for running a clinic and exhibition at a competing event, is what the UPA statement read. That's how it read. Last update is that those players are going to be fighting and appealing that decision. And there is yet to be a decision made on Paris Todd, who also attended all of those things. And so, I would say this is far more of a serious business than it was when we started playing in 2013, right? It was everybody kind of knew everybody and there was no real dollars being exchanged and it was all fun and games. But now between those 4 players, I would guess you're looking at least over $1 million in salary per year, if not 2, right? And so these are very, very serious contracts. They're no longer, handshake deals or one line pieces of paper. These are serious contracts. When you've got these serious contracts and serious amounts of money, like you got to make sure that both sides of these companies are delivering. And so where I come down on it is, do I think they violated their contract? Almost undoubtedly. Do I think it was a heavy-handed approach and should they have not done it? Same. Like I think that was you know uh, a big probably too far of a step. However, you know let's say you and Fabian are in a contract with one another to do this podcast, but you hate each other, right? Well, both of you guys are going to be looking for the first reason to get out of this contract. It's kind of just the way things work, in my opinion. So, no good answer there. I guess the takeaway is seems like they broke their contract. It seems like it was far too heavy handed of a response, but if you're looking to get out of contracts, they did leave the door open.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly because it's pretty obvious, right? Like anybody that's paying attention kind of can see that, right? I think to your point, if we hated each other, we're going to look for the first reason to jump ship, and that's really what it looks like. I mean, I don't have intimate knowledge on exactly what was going on there, but just from the outside looking in, and the differentiation between how their situations were kind of taken into consideration versus Paris is. You see the difference there, right? And one plays a lot nicer than the other two, or the other three rather. So this is actually a perfect seg into you becoming president of the UPA Pro Player Committee. So how did that come about? And what exactly is the purpose of that committee? What do you do in your role there?
Yeah, definitely. So I've never really been a huge, or the UPA has never really been an enormous fan of me, right? I had been kind of an outspoken critic of them during the whole tour wars situation. So right now we're in the midst of, or when this was announced, we were in the midst of contract renegotiations, and the UPA said, "Hey, look, we do want to make a renewed commitment to our pro player council or pro player committee," which those two things are actually different things, which, ask me about that later. Um, we want to make a renewed commitment. The previous board kind of didn't really do a tremendous amount. And so they asked a handful of players, whether they would be up for sort of reinvigorating this to get more player representation. Um, I said, sure, not really thinking that I would end up being the president of it. But once the board was created and they threw it out to a vote among all of the UPA signed players, the UPA signed players voted for me as the president of this. And so the objective here is to continue to grow our seat at the table so that we can maybe weigh in on something like these contract terminations and provide some protection to the players, because whether we like to admit it or not, there is no protection for the players. The UPA can kind of act with impunity on something like this contract situation. And so, having you can't call us an independent body, but having a body that is looking to advocate for players and a body that has autonomy in certain areas would be a good thing. We're growing in the power that I feel like this committee has, but it's not quite there yet.
That's awesome. So a hot button for me, NPL, senior pro pickleball, is just the paddle scenarios. And I played a tournament in Evansville, just with a friend anyway. It was a non-sanctioned event without referees, and it was unbelievable the amount of pop and speed I'm seeing on some of these paddles. And we had our championship, Zane, in October, and I would say probably 25% of the paddles didn't pass going into our championship. We didn't have testing every single event weekend out of the six. We only had two, and so I don't love players towing the line on what's legal, what's not. At the same time, I don't blame them if they're out there for purchase and being marketed as viable paddles. Like, where do you hope this whole paddle construction goes, and where does it get to?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, like, the players are heavily incentivized to toe the line, right? Like, and to use the best piece of equipment that they possibly can. So I've kind of moved to, yes, the player is absolutely responsible for what paddle they're swinging, but like, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? And so, there has to be some sort of better enforcement mechanisms, and I do think we're getting there, right? I think there's um a nice little system, at least that UPA has set up, where you have paddle approval ahead of time, paddle testing ahead of time, and then also a challenge system. You know, I think in your situation, if there was at least a challenge situation, there's at least a deterrent. I don't know how you can prevent cheating. I don't know how you can prevent cheating on the court in the form of line calls either, but you can deter it by slapping the shit out of the people who are found to cheat. So where do I come down on it? I think it's inevitable that players are always going to try and use the best equipment, see things in their own favor. And look at steroids, performance enhancing drugs. Players are always going to be looking to get an advantage, and the paddle is no different. The leagues just have to be able to deter that as much as possible, and that's where that's the pro game where you can do that, right? The amateur game is a little bit different, where there's nothing you can really do to these guys if they show up with an illegal paddle, other than like shame them, I guess. I don't know. What do you think, Rick?
Well,
It's very different between pros and AMs.
it is, and aren't we seeing at an amateur level players of maybe lesser capability get W's? I don't want to be an excuse maker for people, but legitimately, especially indoors with a hot carbon fiber that could be delaminated, it's a difference maker. I've seen it be a difference maker. I want to ask a question to answer your question, and that question is because I'm not that familiar with the challenge system within the UPA. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, basically, if so, let's say you and I are playing one another, and you say, Zane, that Pro XR paddle is way too hot. I can hear it. Everybody can hear it. I'm challenging your paddle. The referee will come to me and say, Rick is challenging your paddle. Would you like to retire your paddle, or would you like to continue playing? If I choose to retire that paddle, I set it down, I go get another paddle, we play on. But if I choose to continue play, the referee will take my paddle at the end of the match. They will send it off to testing. If it's found to be illegal or out of spec, I will get fined, penalized the points, all of that stuff. If it's found to be completely legal and that you were wrong, Rick, you are charged, I don't know, like $250 or something along those lines as well. And that's just so that people aren't challenging paddles willy-nilly. Um, the problem is that you can't, let's say I beat you in that tournament, Rick,
Doesn't
right?
reverse the
Like
outcome.
it doesn't reverse the outcome. I'll
Hmm.
lose my points and prize money, but it can't reverse the outcome, right? That's the main flaw, which is why I think we have to make that deterrent strong enough where it's like, all right, hey, my paddle, I'm getting fined $25,000 for it. Okay, you can make damn sure that I'm not playing with another illegal paddle again, right?
I feel like 2, 3 years ago, there was a US Open policy where if you challenged a paddle and the paddle was not illegal, that you were forfeited from the tournament. Do you remember that scenario?
Really.
Yeah. That was okay,
I
who's gonna
haven't
challenge it?
played a US. Oh,
It's been a
go
while.
ahead. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's been a while since you played the US Open, right?
Yeah, no, it's been a little while since I played the U.S. Open, but you're right. Like, if the ramifications are that huge for challenging a paddle, nobody's ever gonna do it.
Not at all.
That seems completely crazy and backwards.
I
So
vaguely remember this. This is maybe like 2022 or something, right? The first
yes.
year that the PPA players couldn't play the U.S. Open, maybe 2023.
Mhm. One of those 2 years, but it was insane, like, trust me, I had a few scenarios where I wanted to challenge a paddle. I was playing singles, I'm not gonna mention who, in the gold medal match of singles. I'm like, "There's no way I missed 8 returns. I don't miss returns," and something anyway, we'll just leave it at that, but, I am curious because 'cause I'm a paddle tech guy. I feel very, loyal to my made in America brands. I've been to the factory, I know what they do. You're a Pro XR guy. There was a merger there. I feel like there's maybe being a change going on there. Do you know about that change and what's happening?
Yeah. So Paddletech and ProXR have been under the same ownership, right? So I think it was some point last year, or maybe even the year before, it was announced that they were like kind of merging under, not necessarily merging, but partnering. I don't remember what the wording was, but basically the same group owned ProXR and they owned Paddletech, but they operated them as individual brands. They had ProXR over here, Paddletech over here. Well, now ProXR and Paddletech are going to be a single brand. So you're going to have Paddletech, which is all the same stuff that you love, made in America, the same old thing, and then ProXR, which is going to be very, very similar, except it's going to be the a little bit quicker, a little bit more adaptable, sort of sub brand that is still made in China and able to more quickly sort of get some of these paddles to market, right? So let's say some huge adaptation comes out, Paddletech has to make a good amount of changes in order to be able to to get something like that out. ProXR can kind of just go to the manufacturers, say, hey, this is what we want and what we need. And so you're gonna have your Paddletech and ProXR under the Paddletech. It's all going to be the Paddletech brand. So ProXR is kind of going to be a line of Paddletech, and it's also going to allow them to sort of share tech together, right? Like Paddletech cores and ProXR faces. I feel like is something that everybody would love and has wanted to see. So I think that's exciting. I guess that means I'm going to be a Paddletech athlete, and I'm stoked to see what that means.
Awesome.
The funny part is my first real pickleball paddle, I don't even remember what the first pickleball paddle was, like something I bought secondhand from the Cesar Chavez Center, but my first real one was the Paddletech Elements back in like 2014, 2015 or 2016, something along those lines. I went over to the Tempest after that, and then I went to ProLite, which is a Wisconsin brand, but Paddletech was my first real paddle.
Wow.
I love some juicy speculation here. So, since we're on the topic, I think you guys put out something at the Dink, and it's been floating around everywhere. But the rumors, they're not rumors because she's gone. But so Anna Leigh Waters not being on the Paddle Deck website anymore. Any thoughts on where you think she'll land? I know I was talking to Rick about this earlier. Maybe Jimmy Miller was talking about this at Worlds, that there was some Nike folks there kind of with her party. Any thoughts on where you think she'll land?
Yeah, how much time you got? I got a bunch of thoughts on that. I put out a video, or will be putting out a video. I'm sure it'll be out by the time we have this published. Um, I think there are a handful of real contenders, and by real contenders, it's got to be somebody who's willing to pay $10 million, right? The couple of brands within pickleball that I think are capable of this are Yola, Selkirk, Franklin, Vulcan, Wilson, and Paddletech. I'm forgetting one more. There's one more. There were seven. Um, and Adidas as well. There, those are the only players currently within pickleball that I think could actually compete for her contract. There are pros and cons of each one of those, and there's also the Nike rumors still swirling around. So I think it's one of those seven. I would say Yola is probably the front runner there, would be my guess. But the other interesting things are she could be a free agent for 6 months to a year to allow some huge company, I don't know, say like Apple, to come in and decide that they want to make a paddle, right?
Tesla.
That's a ridiculous example, but she could just be a public free agent, or she could she's got the money to buy her own she's got the money and the branding to buy and operate her own paddle company, right? Why sell somebody else's stuff rather than selling your own stuff? And she is probably the only athlete in our sport that could do so. So we could honestly be looking at a potential acquisition from the Waters.
I love how your brain thinks. This is I didn't even think that didn't even pop into my brain.
You didn't know, Fabian, that Zane is her agent? Let's
I
start another
wish.
hot
I would
rumor.
love I would
Yeah.
love 5% of whatever this paddle deal ends up being. I'll retire.
Zane, Annalise in a whole different stratosphere. We know that. Have you seen any studies on female branded athletes connected to paddles versus the male athletes. I heard, and I feel like this was from a manufacturer, about the male athletes versus the female athletes and what sells off the rack. Do you have any data on that?
No, I'm curious what you heard. I don't have data on it. No, I've
Yeah.
got ideas and maybe some hot takes for Fabian, but yeah, I'll have you kick it off, Rick.
Well, I heard that the male top pros, those paddles are selling more than than the females. Obviously, other than Anna Leigh. That's what I heard. I would be shocked if Anna Leigh's paddle wasn't number one in sales, although maybe Ben's paddle is. Fabian, what do you know on this, or what do you think?
I mean, just speaking as a guy who plays pickleball with other guys, I just think something that kind of tears at your masculinity when you look down at your paddle and there's a woman's name on it. Like me, I'm not that guy. I'll play with any paddle as long as I can win. But I think for a lot of men, you'd see them playing with another signature male's paddle versus a woman's paddle. So with this sport, probably, and I don't have the data to back this up, but probably being dominated by male players, you would see higher sales in those types of battles. That's my guess.
I think I mean, that's my guess as well. Like, I think there aren't that many guys that are going to want to play with a lady's signature paddle. I think there are plenty of ladies who don't really care and would play with a guy's signature paddle. And so, like, when it comes to the ladies, I would guess that their signature paddle sales are not huge compared to the men's signature paddle sales, depending on the lady and depending on the man, of course. Uh, However, that doesn't speak to the brand awareness that they bring, which is as good, if not potentially better than the guys, right? And so, um, I think that they still move paddles. People will see Anna Leigh using a paddle tech, and then they'll go buy the Christian Alshon version if they're a guy, right? So I do still think that there is huge value. It's just slightly different.
Awesome. I'd like to pivot here, Zane. You're such a high energy guy, and I feel like you're kind of a mini me. Like, I love energy. I love people. I love communication, and I think you'd be great with kids. And you might do things at pickleball with kids right now. I don't know about it. Obviously, I think I'm very connected to kids in my community. Um, where do you see younger pickleball going? I mean, right now, obviously, you got the APP and the PPA and the different next gen options. Are you involved in kids development there in Wisconsin? And what would you recommend to one of your students that might be coming up through the channels to be a successful pro?
Yeah, definitely. So, Skid, we've taught together a couple times. I've seen you at tournaments. I, I think you like working with kids because I think you are a 54-year-old or 53 or whatever you are. I think you're just a big kid, and I love that about you. And there's
Yeah,
absolutely like that's a huge compliment.
yeah.
Um, and so like I'm not currently doing anything like specifically focused on growing the game for kids. I'm attempting to grow the game in other ways, and I wish I could. But my main nonprofit partner is Stop Alzheimer's Now. That's something that's really close to my life, and built a good partnership with them. So I try to focus on that. But in terms of how like what's happening, there's so much going on. First off, I think this is inevitably going to be a high school sport and then a collegiate sport, Olympic sport, all of that stuff. Like, it's not if, it is when, and that when is going to be sooner rather than later. And then with all that stuff comes very serious junior development. And you would know all of this stuff from tennis, right? That is probably a multi-billion-dollar industry right there. And so it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And the cool thing is we're already seeing some of these kids competing at the pro level. The PPA sees it, right? They're signing all these kids left and right. They just created MLP juniors. They've had PPA juniors. I don't know how you're going to be able to do NPL juniors, but that would be cool. um, so
Grandkids?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Oh, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and these guys are gonna change the game. On my YouTube channel, I've recently been breaking down a few of these different matches where these kids, these 12 and 14-year-olds have been playing against the current established pros, and it's just been so much fun to watch.
You know, with the time that we have left, I just want to talk to you about kind of coaching and how you pivoted from playing to being a serious content creator. So you see hundreds, if not thousands, of players at your clinics. What are the most common mistakes that you see intermediate players making that keep them from kind of hitting that next level?
Ooh. I mean, those are that's a very, very broad question. And so I guess I would start with being very focused and being very uh not egotistical in your own game. So I find that a lot of players simply work on the wrong things. Here's what I would suggest to an intermediate player. Go play a competitive event and videotape yourself. And then build a picture of what happened in that match and compare it to what actually happened in that match when you go watch the tape. I guarantee those are going to be very, very different pictures, right? Your opponents are always going to try and look for your weaknesses and exploit them relentlessly. And so videotape yourself playing, figure out what it is you need to work on, because I feel like that intermediate level, people work on the wrong things. They say, "Oh, I need to work on dinking." Maybe dinking isn't the problem in your game. Maybe it's your quick hands, right? So, get an accurate representation of what you need to work on and then hammer it. So, that's not a real answer to you. That's not a specific answer to your question, but I feel like that's the best way for that intermediate player to get better.
Yeah, I think there's
Zane,
tons of
I
value there.
I do a number of camps, and it's just interesting to me that I feel like the evolution of coaches hasn't gotten to a great place yet. And I did 25 camps this year, and so many of the same myths, fallacy. The forehand takes middle. I can't stand when I hear that. I mean, I play with a lefty
What a
all the time.
disaster.
Like, what? Please stop saying that. And everybody says that. Run as fast as you can to get to the kitchen line. Okay. If you're returning, sure, you got to move in there quickly. But if you're in a decent third, you don't run in there. And so for me, it's, making sure people go to the right coaches with the right perspectives and how to communicate it. There's YouTube videos out there, and you don't even know half the coaches that are out there. I'm not saying they can't be a good coach, but I am saying that I still don't think there's a ton of great coaches out there. So I just hope students are a little more selective as to who they take their authority from when it comes to coaching. And by the way, Fabian's not allowed to hate me because I am his coach. So you mentioned that earlier. No, he's not going to hate me. I'm his coach. He's got to love me.
Well, Rick, I think I mean, that's so true, but I would kind of go back to you and say that, like, there's almost no wrong advice out there in a way, right? Like, it's very much dependent on the skill of the player. And so, like, let's talk about something. I use this example all the time. Should a player use their wrist or not use their wrist? There's no answer to that question. You've got to know the actual player. So if you are on YouTube and you see a video of never use your wrist, that person is 100% correct for a 3.0 player. If I'm teaching a 3.0 player, I will say there is zero reason for you to ever use your wrist at this level. If I said that to a pro, I would get laughed out of the room. At the pro level, pros are using their wrist on probably 60+% of their shots, right? And so I think one of the big problems is finding that very level specific advice and figuring out a coach that is coaching to your level, right? A lot of the stuff that I put out on YouTube is very bad advice for a 3.0 player, talking about how to use a flick. 3.0 shouldn't be flicking. Um, so I don't know. I think that's part of the problem with YouTube videos is advice can be right and wrong depending on the level.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, one of my favorite basketball coaches of all time was Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski from Duke, and he really prophesized about really molding coaching to each student and their abilities and whatnot. I don't totally agree with you, Zane, in that I've seen some videos where it says to extend your paddle out as far as you can, pointing at the ball in the ready position. And under no circumstance
Yeah,
would
fair
I
enough.
ever recommend that. So there are definitely examples of
You're right.
no,
There is
that
some
that
just
coaching.
straight up wrong advice. You're right. You're right. There's wrong advice. There is.
But I am glad you said that because I'm sure a number of coaches will be watching this, and I've been coaching for between tennis and pickleball. I started coaching when I was 16, so I've been almost 38 years of coaching. Like I really do agree with you that you've got to nurture different perspectives. For instance, one thing I do for sure to my older um, aged campers is, hey, encourage them to use the non-dominant hand because they're slowing down. They're not moving so well. Well, they've heard a lot, oh, never switch hands. Like you absolutely should switch hands. If you're becoming less mobile and you can't get there, and you have more reach, why would you not do that? So I think leaning into who your client is really, really important. But there's still a lot of people that probably need a little more training and coaching. And look, the sport's blowing up in a magnitude we didn't even probably perceive 12 years ago when we got into it.
No.
But I'm happy where it's going now. More established coaches is a great thing. What would you say is your signature shot, Zane? Like right now, but we know your serve. The Zane saw was incredible. Do you have a shot right now that you feel like is your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, there was the Zane saw. I liked the tomahawk, right? That's where you would take your backhand and actually flip it over to get a little bit of extra reach. I wouldn't call that my signature. I feel like, maybe my signature shot is at this point is kind of that hybrid drive, that somewhere between a drive and a drop, a third shot. I feel like at the beginning of 2022, um, when I wasn't able to use the two-handed spin serve anymore, I had to figure out a new way to sort of you know, get to the top of the singles rankings again. And I feel like that's a shot that's really helped me. And a lot of plenty of people have adapted that as well too. So right now I would say yeah, I think that that's a shot that I really like. I think it's a shot that deserve some credit for in making it popular, and it's still something that I use. It's not like it's certainly not an every shot type or every point type of thing, but I would say that that might be my biggest strength is that those third shot hybrid drip shots. What's the signature? I know the signature grunt. I know that that's a signature, right? I always felt like you on the two-handed backhand, you had a really compact swing and then boom, just like ripped through with the hands quite quickly and had really good off the bounce speed ups there. Like what would you say is your signature?
I honestly feel like my backhand slice is money, and it creates a lot of issues on third shots with my opponent. I would have said 2 years ago my speed up with my lefty. Obviously, I'm right-handed, and I've started to really perfect it. But I feel like a lot of people are doing that now. I feel like running around my forehand return, which I'm comfortable with, but to hit my backhand slice, because due to my tennis connectivity, I just feel like it cuts like a knife, and it's really problematic. So that's what I'd say. And I do want to segue into the tennis perspective. Zane, you and I obviously tennis background. I think maybe the last time we saw each other was possibly down under in Australia, tennis tournament. Anything you would talk about with tennis?
Yeah, well, you and I had been chatting about when the last time we saw each other was. I said I saw you, Rick, at the Aussie Open. You were I went and got to see Ben Shelton, obviously your nephew playing against Yannick Sinner, world number one at the time, and there is Rick front row going crazy for Ben in that one. So I saw you, but you didn't see me. But
I may have texted
the
you. I knew
cool
there was a tournament there.
Yeah, yeah. The cool thing is, like, so many more of these tennis players taking things seriously, particularly on the women's singles side at the UPA, right? Like, your guys that are ranked 200, 250, 300, they're still hammering tennis. But you're starting to see some of these ladies who are in their physical prime, ranked 200 to 300 to 400, jumping ship and starting to come over to pickleball, and we've never seen that from the guys. We've got washed up old Travis Rettenmeyers coming over, and I say that way because Travis is a great friend of mine, and I would say it even meaner and ruder if he was actually on this. But we've had guys who have finished their tennis careers coming over to tennis, or guys who have, come over to pickleball, or guys who have never started that pickleball or that tennis career come over, but we haven't had that 250th ranked male tennis player switch over to pickleball, and I think that's super super cool. You think we're gonna see more of that, Rick?
Well, I think the cat's out of the bag in regards to the financing of players that are possibly in a similar situation between pickleball and tennis. I mean, my daughter's in college tennis. I know a lot of college tennis coaches and have this conversation all the time. And I just think that the money behind pickleball, if you're not a top 100 pro tennis player, could be incredible. I mean, listen to what you just said. I mean, Anna Leigh, $10 million starting, like that's insane. And this sport hasn't even been around that long. So I think it's more of a money driven thing. I will tell you that, it's fair to say that the some of the top tennis pros probably are very territorial about their tennis compared to pickleball. I know Ben's mom is it's my sister, and she loves pickleball. She's a great player. I want her to play in the NPL. Hope she does. But I think there's becoming a more of a respect amongst the sports. I cannot stand Zane, and I know you've been probably a target of it too. But on either side, the negativity aspect. I mean, obviously, I'm dealing with kids that they literally can come into my pickleball facility and choose tennis or pickleball on a given day, and that's I don't care which they go to. So I just hope that that consternation. I understand courts getting taken over from tennis to pickleball and whatnot, but I'd love to see these be very similar appreciation sports because I think it's golf, tennis, and pickleball are the lifelong sports now.
Yeah, 100%. Frankly, like, it's hard for me to say now that pickleball exists, it's hard for me to call tennis a lifelong sport, right? Like, yes, you can play it, but if you see some 75-year-old guys out there playing tennis, that does not look like fun. They can have a lot more fun playing pickleball at that point. Like, I'll die on that hill. Um,
Yeah.
but like, you're not seeing those 75-year-old dudes play basketball, right? Or tackle football, of course. So tennis, a lifelong sport compared to most. However, now when you compare it to tennis, I don't know if it is. Or I'm sorry, when you compare it to pickleball.
Well, I've been in tennis 3 times as long as I've been in pickleball, but I will say that pickleball has had the life-altering changes for the 50 plus, 60 plus, and 70 plus crowd like I've never seen in tennis. That's a fact, and it is because the easier capability and play and socialization and all those things. I wish both sports well, but I think there's a lot of truth to what you just said. Yeah.
You wanna know
So,
something interesting is I was over in Malaysia and Vietnam this fall, and they're having some of their top tennis players come over with some tennis federation support and get into pickleball. This tennis versus pickleball beef doesn't exist in Southeast Asia, it seems like, right? One of the guys who actually had he beat Federico Stocksrud at the last event, PPA Asia event in China. He was junior Wimbledon champion from Vietnam, Hoang Nam Lee, and he like has the seemingly the support of tennis and pickleball from Vietnam, which I think that's super cool and probably a huge reason why Vietnam is absolutely exploding with pickleball players right now.
wow. And I've heard pros from both sides. Oh, tennis is bad for your pickleball. Pickleball is bad for your tennis. The funny thing is, I still play tennis a little bit with my high school kids in the summer. And I feel like my connectivity to the ball due to the restricted backswings and whatnot, I feel like I'm hitting the ball better than I ever have. Obviously, I'm not enjoying the movement of this monster sized court all of a sudden, but at least the point of contacts and whatnot, I found pickleball has helped my tennis game. So I don't think that's the
Yeah.
case for everybody where it's going to hurt their tennis because they're playing pickleball. A lot of pros seem to be saying that. at least in this neck of the
Yeah,
woods.
I've got a hot take on that one. I know you guys love my hot takes. I played both of those things in college, especially my senior year. In college tennis, I was playing pickleball from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the morning, and then going and playing my practices from 1 to 3 in the afternoon on a couple days per week, because I had a couple days where I had only like Tuesday, Thursday classes in my last semester. I think when you've reached a point of unconscious competence in both sports, 1 plus 1 equals 3. Our My pickleball game got so much better because of the tennis I was playing, and my tennis got so much better because of the pickleball that I was playing. Once I was had unconscious competence in both of those things, I went and took table tennis lessons, right, to help my pickleball. And it helps my pickleball tremendously. It didn't screw up my pickleball. It helps my pickleball, especially those backhand flicks. And so I think, again, both things are correct. If you are just starting tennis or just starting pickleball, playing the other is going to screw you up. But once you have a baseline in those sports, it's a 1 plus 1 equals 3 situation, and a hot take and a hill that I will die on.
Well, Zane, I think I'm getting better with conscious incompetence. So
Conscious
I think the reverse.
incompetence.
I'm just kidding. But I did want to kind of circle back with the Ben in Australia. You know, he lost to Sinner in the semis of Australia. I was then lucky enough to be at Wimbledon when he played him in the quarters. And I mean, Sinner, like what he does on the dead run. I remember that match specifically, Zane, where Ben had a set point, first set, and he's running Sinner all around, and Sinner's on like 7 feet outside the doubles line, hitting the most ridiculous, what should be a defensive shot, almost turns into offense. It's unbelievable what he and Alcaraz are doing in tennis is super, super impressive. And, you know, I like to compare pro athletes. Obviously, I'm front and center to a lot of the pro tennis world at this point. Lucky me for sure. But I do think the level of athleticism, which is kind of denounced by some tennis players of pickleball, I feel like both sports require an insane amount of athleticism at the highest level.
Yeah, yes, but different, right?
Different.
I'm also not going to be here and say that the pickleball athletes are more athletic than tennis players. Like, I'm not going to do that, right? Because it wouldn't be true. Like, I think you're seeing the quality of athletes increase tremendously in pickleball, but it pales in comparison currently to tennis, because you don't need it as much. I think pickleball is slightly more skill reliant, um, as a percentage of your overall game, right? You could be a freak athlete, but if you don't have the skills, like, you're going to be destroyed. Um, so I just don't think that athleticism pays the same dividends in pickleball as it does in tennis. But at the top level, that's obviously going to change.
Yep.
You know, I want
Um,
to move into this or that segment, Fabian, real quick. I just want to hear from two things from Zane. Zane, you get two options here. You got to choose one.
All
Okay.
right,
Um, New Year's Eve or Christmas?
Christmas.
Masters Pros or Champions Pros?
Ooh, Masters. I don't know if I know what the Masters is.
Masters, there's 60s, for
Mas-
champions are 50s.
okay, I'm going champions. Never mind, because that's where you and Althoff are at. I got
Come
those back
on,
mixed
come
up.
on. Yeah.
so Zane, on your show, I know you guys love to do a blind ranking. It's the holiday season, so I want you to blind rank these 5 holiday desserts.
Oh,
You ready
all
for this?
right, love it.
Eggnog,
5. Can
fruitcake.
you even call that a dessert? What? That's just a drink and not even a
There's
good one. That's 5. That is the
280
easy.
Bro, there's 280 calories in 4 ounces of eggnog. That is 1,000% a dessert.
5. It's not even that good. You're gonna give me 280 calories, and it's not even gonna be that good. 5. Easiest 5.
Fruitcake,
4. Well, let me know when the good ones are coming.
pumpkin pie,
3. We're getting somewhere now. It's still not amazing.
puppy chow.
Number 1. That's easy. Number 1, puppy chow. I have so many good
No.
memories of my buddy Alex Che's mom making incredible puppy chow back in high school. Oh man, we would eat puppy chow and play Call of Duty, and just like those controllers would just be disgusting, but great memories.
Sugar cookies,
2.
It's the
That's a
last one. Yeah.
perfect list, Fabian. Absolutely perfect list.
I mean, fruitcake over eggnog is kind of a hot take, but I guess when you don't know what's coming, you gotta rank them.
Fruitcake's not bad. Eggnog is bad.
It's historically
Zane,
terrible.
Zane, I want to thank you for coming on to This is Pickleball. We respect what you do. I certainly am a huge fan of yours and a follower. We're here at Third Shot Pickleball here in Indianapolis. We love this facility close to my hometown in Zionsville. Hope you come by sometime, and we'll be following you in the MLP and the PPA and, your podcast and all your camps and whatnot. Fabian, is there anything you want to tell our listeners and where they can kind of follow us?
Yeah, follow us at This Is Pickleball Podcast on all social media and YouTube. Zane, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm Zane Navratil Pickleball on just about everything. And if Navratil is too hard to spell, just look up Zane Pickleball and hopefully I show up. But guys, I appreciate you guys chatting. I'm glad somebody else likes the blind ranking game. I love the blind ranking game. Nobody wants to do it with me.
I
So
love it.
Fabian, that was
Yeah.
awesome. I appreciate you guys and would love to stop by the facility at some point. And guys, thank you so much for having me. It was good catching up with you again, Rick. And
You
Fabian,
too.
it was great to meet you too. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.